If you look under here too. Hi, Henrietta. Come here. Hi. We're being bombarded. We're being bombarded. Hi. Hi, hi, hi. This is what she does. She smiles. Hi, hi. She like puts her teeth up. Hi, guys. Hi, you guys. Hi, you guys. Oh my goodness. What the heck? Hi. Okay, okay. When we open this, we have to look, because one of the most special things here is that we get this opportunity. This is the Dolly update. We get this special opportunity to get the fitment super good. And if you look like from my angle, like where you start to draw that, I don't have anything solid for you right now. But we're pretty much designing it to be almost right at that bulge. And I think this is just a little, okay, yeah, this is floating. So when this isn't floating and the grill is on here, this, like the furthest outward portion is the exact portion of here, and we get that right. The other thing we get right, check it out from here. We also get to get this just right. Now, you can definitely see here that this is nudged forward a bit. And what that is that's for beam clearance, because when the beam swings, you know, your wheelbase pulls in. So what we're doing is avoiding all the crazy firewall work. And I also think when you nudge the wheelbase forward just a little bit on anything, it gives it this presence. The number one thing you want to stay away from is this, right? At all costs. If you're spending any kind of money on a truck, at all costs, you do not do that. There's a lot of front ends that are like built for luxury pre-owners that are already tube chassis. But like say you put a big one-piece clip on and you got this tire and it is here. And then there's 10 inches of wheel opening past here, and it's proportionally, like when you're invested in one of these cars, dude, no. So with this frame rail system, you know, if you don't know where we're at with this thing and what we're doing with Dolly, then just watch the previous one, and you know, because we're gonna just dive right into where we're at now. This gives us the opportunity to get the, you know, the stance and the wheelbase super good. Same with the rear. It's not on here, but same with the rear. Like we set this up, we figured out how much wheelbase, you know, we could subtract and how buried we could make the rear tire with the bedside still being clean, where it's not super short guy, you know, where we can get this reasonable. So we've had the design creative liberties to get this right, and it's been a blessing. This, it wasn't by design, I would say, to give this to Luke as a project, but Luke is one of my newer guys. I call him the shop manager because he knows where everything is here. I always do this because I'll get on a tangent of how proud I am of all my team and my guys here. Stand up dudes, and you know, they're all under 30. Anytime I get into it, I always look at them and I go, these guys are literally tenfold better examples of human being that I was when I was their age, 22 to 27. And I'm so proud of them for that. And so, not by design, but just by default, this has turned into Luke's project. I obviously spend a lot of time every day going through and helping the guys with design direction. But as far as execution, everybody does their own thing. And Luke has taken this up. He knows SolidWorks, and he's refining his skill in SolidWorks, which is a total asset that we didn't even know existed. So now that we have a plasma table, we're getting a little out of the prehistoric ages and maybe just into like the early 2000s now. And we have a plasma table, and he's on SolidWorks over by my desk with his computer. He literally can take a picture of something and do like a, a side view. Oh, I'm super distracted with the welding rod, huh? Let's get something smaller. He can go over there. I can draw like a side view, sketch out how I want the plate work to look, give him a couple different three-dimensional angles, and then he can one-to-one draw it on SolidWorks, and then we can go cut it, we can prep it, we can put it on. And that's where we're at. So right now what's going on, this is not super accurate. This is just an informational setup to get our frame rails constructed, to kind of know, the architecture of the car, where things are going to want to be, what's going to clear, where the pivots are going to be, what's going to work, what's not, where the shocks are going to be, and then starting to figure this out. This is pretty cool. It's going to be way up here, you know what I mean? And then the drop down will be like that. So let's go look at the frame rail. But this is all stuff we did here. It's obviously root passed, so it's just, I want to say hot and nasty, but let's just say it's hot. We'll go back through here and we'll tidy everything up with a cover pass, but everything's chromoly, 3/16, a little bit of 0.95, but mostly 3/16 and 125 or 1/8 inch. The radius arms, we also opted for non-center mount radius arms. So we have those things kicked on the frame, and then we're building the frame to the exact spec of what the car wants. So we're not subject to where it kicks up or all the holes it has or the extra brackets. It's all streamlined, and we'll go check this one that's on the table here. So what you're looking at, this is the interior pivot. So this is your upper link pivot. This is the rear of the car. This is your lower link pivot. And this is all the plate work we've been designing. There's another kind of system on the other side, and this all translates through. We've piggybacked off the frame, so we have a nice chunk of hardware going through there, where it's not going to be put into a shear. It's got a lot of support. If you look under here too. So under here you can kind of see, this is the outer link pivot that's kind of stretched up. The other thing we thought about is where the B pillar is going to be in the cage. So then we land all the plate work right in an area where we're going to stab the B pillar. You can see the splice here, and then you can see the reference. Amelia, come here. You can see the reference of where the radius arm is. We're doing this long drawn out pull to get over to the rear pivot. And then what we're going to do is we'll piggyback. So right where the splice is, where the directional change is for the next portion of frame, is also right where the radius arm mount is. So we get a win-win, because we can overlay where the splice is or the junction, and we'll draw it back this way. And then same thing, we'll use the same kind of style, draw it back. Something you'll notice is the styling is very minimal for stuff we do. Like if we look over at that thing, there's style there and design there that's not what we're doing here. And that's part of the exercise with Dolly, is toning it down to just simple, clean, streamlined stuff. There used to be trucks that were very inspiring for me, back in like the New Line days or Suspension Innovation days. I'm not gonna drill and tap into frame rails, but I do respect how tidy their stuff was. So now we're just doing our own version of that in ways that make sense. But you can see here, this is all frame rail, right? So this one is actually tagging way deep into the front end. This is, where your grill or bumper would be. And what we'll do, this is longer than it's gonna be, but we're gonna get past wherever the beam pivot is that hangs down here. And then on the outside, there's gonna be the swinger, that's gonna be here. And then once we figure out where we're gonna clear the engine and the accessories, we'll have a cutout here that'll be for the radiator. That'll be like a tray. And then on the opposing edge, we'll figure out where the grill's gonna be. And then we're gonna have a nice approach angle cut into this thing, and we'll just continue down for the bumper. So it looks like a lot more work, but really think about the time you're gonna be into this thing. I'm circling back to the last episode. Filling all the holes, cutting all the brackets off, cutting all the old bullshit off, making that right, plating the frame in, boxing it in, putting overlays in it, then going back and doing all the mounts. So, you know, it's gonna start going really fast. So one of the things here is the welding. I hire my guys specifically off of their ambition, their drive, their attitude, not having vices. A lot of deep-rooted character values versus skill set, and a lot of it, you know, like with Colin, he had the fundamentals of TIG welding down, and he's accelerated right up to table welding. He's pretty solid with welding components on the table. But the next challenge after that is welding chassis stuff, you know, either in the car, in the roll cage area, tube work, you know, awkward positions. I'd love to have one of my guys at that place, but it's just something where, you know, I usually end up welding all the chassis by myself, and I don't mind it. It's a good reset for me. It triggers insecurities every time because I'm so close that I think I have to get everything perfect, and I'm not able to look at the greater scope of things. So I'm gonna go through and weld all this. I'll have Luke root pass all this stuff and do the hot pass. And then, you know, we'll probably wanna get all these assemblies final passed and final welded before we tie them together so we can kind of flip them around easier and work them. So we're at a really close spot for that. But next time you guys check in, I think we'll have radius arms mounted, beam pivots cut out and done. We will have the swingers done, and the swingers are already cut out and root passed, but like the provisions on the frame, everything will be tabbed. I think the fuel cell will be in the rear, you know, and we'll have the rear frame rail done. That's where we want to get. That's our next like milestone, is we want to have all the lower frame done where it has provisions for everything, and then we get to start like putting the transmission in, putting the engine in, getting the interior roll cage going, which again, it'll be safe, but it's not going to be like this crazy overbuilt thing. Something else that we added, we talked about doing we deleted the center mount radius arm. The other thing I wanted to do is I wanted way more swing out of the radius arm. I want to get a straight edge to show you what I'm talking about. All this stuff on here, like all the beams and stuff, if you want to take a look again, all of the knuckle and the beam and the radius arm and all that design that's all DIY. So that's Jason Hurd stuff. If you guys go to DIYoffroad.com, all these files are available. They're plasma table friendly. They are super easy to navigate. They tell you all the recommendations for plate size, for setup. So, you know, all that stuff is available. And I wanted to stress this with the build where we use all of the DIY Jason Hurd stuff. So it's an example, like it's a walking, talking DIY off-road thing. The only thing we're doing different is the pivots for the frame. We're doing all that stuff ourselves. Something I wanted to change. If you look in here, Joe, so this bolt distance from radius arm to beam and this bracket is something we designed. And it's gonna get a secondary measure where it ties in like a tube over to here. But what that is, that extra bracket is to give more length to the radius arm. And I want to explain something that is my mechanical bro science, and I don't know if that means it's right or wrong or good or bad. I'm a believer in the long radius arm. And why I say that is because just assume that this is the length of your radius arm, and that's your center line. When this thing droops out, they call it dirty hooker travel, right? It's not as clean as a center mount A-arm. When it droops out, the actual wheelbase pulls in. So what you're doing is then when you're going through the cycle of the travel, it's reaching a point here where when it's coming out, it's fighting the cleanliness of the travel because you're literally pulling your wheelbase in and then it's pushing back out as you have the inertia to go forward. So there's a tugging thing that's going on that's not only harsh on all the hardware, but it's also not gonna let your car go as fast. That's my bro science. Cool. So what we did is I wanted more length on that radius arm. So we set it at 8 degrees of caster at ride height, which 8 is my prime number for ride height. And then we made it longer. So when we do that pull back here, that radial pull where it sucks the wheelbase in, it minimizes that and it makes it cycle cleaner. And at the same time, you know, like just for an exaggerated thing, if you're doing this, your caster is also changing significantly based on the length of your radius arm. So the farther out you are, the cleaner this thing's gonna hit. And that's where we're at with that. Before we close this out, this is a Fittipaldi wheel. This is, I forget which model it is, but these are forged real bead locks on a BFG race tire. This is their new compound, but this is what you're gonna see on Dolly. This wheel is running on Kevin's Raptor. It is running on Duke, it is running on Dolly, and it's also running on a Roadster Shop frame that we'll be getting in at some point soon here. Luke is over here doing his SolidWorks stuff. That is all his frame revision, so he's figuring that out. Is that for the radius arm?
This is what we're primitively starting out.
And you're just taking intel from the rear?
Yep.
Cool, and that's totally what I'm good with. If we're just drawing over to the same, like we're doing the same kind of deal, except flipping it, then I'm good on that.
Yep, that's what we're gonna, probably not have it that elongated, you know, we made it longer for the tube to land to. We'll shorten that up more reasonable. There's a kick here in the frame that's not in this drawing, and that's where it's going to live.
Perfect.
We'll go over it from there.
Cool. We have shocks that are back from King, so we'll go out and take a peek at those. Running, like we said, 3.5-inch coilover. I don't know what size spring that is, but I know it's a big one. We chose a really good color combo, but I think we're gonna run white cab, polished wheel, black beadlock, the color combo on the shocks, and then, like I said, all the inside, when we talked about originally, like saddle, Western, 2-bench seats, 6-seater, clean, tidy interior, stock dash, you know, with telemetry in it, just simple. Just like a farm truck that can be really fun. So this guy collapsed. That is a 20-inch, 3.5-inch coilover. Race series, finned reservoir. I'll get all this stuff undone for you. Well, some of it. This is just for you guys. Then we got to rewrap this stuff till we're going to use it. So same deal, like no bypass, big squishy truck, farm truck, big block Ford, sounds like a boat, super dependable, super reliable, super simple, basic stuff. So 20-inch stroke on this thing, the front gets an 18-inch stroke, probably gonna swing travel on the front that's somewhere in the 24 to 25-inch range, and then you know, whatever you get, the ratio is almost 1-to-1 in the back. So, you know, maybe 20 inches in the back, 21 if we can do magic somehow. I mean, the other angle, if we wanted to take it a little step further, we could build a small trailing arm that's just a tube. I remember Orange Truck Chris, he had this red F-150 and it had these links that he brought to me when I was working for my stepdad back in the day, 2013. And he had this little fabricated part on the end of it, you know, so that the rear link that would be a tube normally instead of a trailing arm, it had a little kick towards the rear tire, and then it had a little pocket with tabs to double shear a shock. So that would expedite a little more travel, you know, and if we did that on this, it would be an easy thing to build, and maybe we'd get it like matching the front. It would be nice to have like 25 in the front and 25 in the rear. This color combo is beautiful to me. This was our client's idea, but there is a really pretty thing going on with that. You know, they have like that monster green, and then they have this green, which is just really pretty. So this is going to be our package, obviously bolt on for the rear, and then we have another, I think we have a 2.5 by 2.5 stroke. I don't usually run a full stroke on the front bump for a beam truck. That'll be the same thing, but just a can style bump stop. So I think that, I know Robert Maruzzi is, I think we're in queue right now, or we're starting on the engine. We can always use that old big block. The other thing is, you guys, if you see that frame out there and the entire suspension assembly, so the front axle, the wheels, the tires, the coilovers, the engine, the transfer case, everything, that's all for sale. And if you're interested in that, you can message us and we'll get back to you. So I hope you enjoyed the episode. Have a great day.